Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and welcome to our episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for today is, do you think that Ying's new gadget is going to be a heat-seeking flashbang based off of the recent teaser trailer for Rainbow Six Siege? I also saw that, and I think you weren't the only one that had that same conclusion because it looked very similar to the way that one of the gadgets worked in The Division. If you guys ever played The Division, there was a contraption that you could throw out. It would lock on to an enemy, and when it got close, it would take them out. I just don't think that's the same gadget here, and that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, this technology seems a bit too futuristic, and I don't know if Ubisoft is ready to add in an AI component into Siege. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to have any AI in this game whatsoever. This game is very complex. I mean, there's destruction, there's a lot going on, and then if you want to introduce some sort of AI that has to wheel around, find and lock onto someone, and then make its way around all the terrain, that just sounds like it would be a glitchy mess. And so that's one reason. The other reason is I feel like in that recent leak that we saw, and that leak could be wrong, so take this with a grain of salt, is that I would have assumed that it would have mentioned that in the description. It says that it is a cluster flashbang. It doesn't mention heat-seeking whatsoever, and I feel like that would be a pretty defining aspect with this gadget. On top of that, with this reveal, it also mentions that you can attach it to a wall. Why would you ever want to attach it to a wall if it has this heat-seeking component to it? And so it's for those very reasons why I just don't think that's going to be a thing. I think it's going to be very versatile. You can throw this under a door, or you can attach it to a wall and it'll act kind of like a fuse charge, but I don't think it's going to have that heat-seeking component to it. What I'm really hoping for, and what is kind of confirmed to me, is that this is going to be a really awesome flashbang effect. If you're able to just sort of kind of roll this into a room like a normal flashbang, well then why would you ever want to play as this operator? It's got to bring something more. And so what I'm assuming is that once you get it into the room, it's just going to launch a cluster of flashbangs all over the place. So one of the weaknesses, as we mentioned when we first talked about this, was that flashbangs have a hard time reaching and actually flashing the enemy. And so what would be really cool about her is she can roll this under a doorway really quickly. It just bombards the room in every single direction with flashbangs, and then you can charge in with your team and take them down. That's kind of what I got with this reveal. Now, of course, I could be wrong. This is just pure speculation, but based off the description, based off what we've seen so far, and the fact that you can attach it to a wall, I'm kind of guessing that's the direction that Ubisoft is going with it, but of course, only time will tell. The next question comes from Kyle, and it is, what do you think about a 3-armor, 3-speed operator with no gadget or utility, just a primary and a secondary? I was wondering when Ubisoft would decide to add in an operator that has this kind of dynamic, because I think it could be really interesting. Do I think there should be a 3-armor, 3-speed? Probably not, but maybe 3-speed, 2-armor, and have like a gadget that isn't super impactful, but is at least halfway decent, maybe not as powerful as some of the others in the game. That could actually be a really interesting take and add some unique dynamic there. Then in the future, we could have a bunch of operators, maybe 3-armor, 2-speed, something along those lines. Their gadget, I don't think, should be as powerful as some of the others in the game, because then why would you want to play as the ones that are more defined to their role? But it could give them a bit more flexibility. That said, though, I do not want to see a 3-armor, 3-speed that has no gadget, because that is entirely selfish. You guys probably already know that I don't like the concept of Blackbeard, because he's just all about getting kills, but at least he has some sort of gadget. Yes, his shield protects himself, but he can, if he wants to, open up a wall with his breaching charges. That is a possibility. From your description, it sounds like he has no gadget and no utility whatsoever. All this guy would be about is running around like a maniac, trying to take advantage of peeking around corners and hopefully absorbing a lot of bullets with that extra armor. That just kind of rubs me the wrong way. The funny thing about this is, honestly, it probably wouldn't even be as good as you think it would, and a lot of people would still continue to use operators like Ashe, Hibana, and IQ because they have that utility. When an Ashe comes across an obstacle, like a wall, or they come across barbed wire, she can use her breaching rounds. She can use her grenade launcher to dispose of that and then rush and take advantage of her speed. This guy, on the other hand, though, if they come across barbed wire, they're basically screwed if they're by themselves. Like, they need to use their teammates, and teamwork is always great, but they have to rely on their teammates to actually get the most out of the operator. And so in general, while I think that this is a direction that Ubisoft might take into the future, I would be really interested to see if they do go with like 2 speed, 3 armor, or vice versa, or something along those lines. I think that'd be really interesting, but I do still think that they need to have some sort of gadget that helps out their team in some way. But of course, that is just my opinion. The next question comes from Christian, and it is, if Jaeger and Bandit were to get their ACOG sights removed, which defending operator do you think should get one? So this has caused a bit of a controversy in the Rainbow Six Siege community. Some people are saying that this leak is fake, some people are saying that it's real, and then you got both sides bickering back and forth, which would actually make the game better. For me personally, I honestly wouldn't mind if this change went through, because if they gave the ACOGs to some other operators, which we'll get to here in a second, that could actually be a really interesting way to balance out the game. Now, the reason why I don't think this is going to be all that big of a deal is I feel like Jaeger and Bandit are already some of the best operators you can have on defense. How often do you see Jaeger? Constantly. He has access, or they have access, to some of the best weapons in the game. They have 3 speed, which is very valuable. You can slap an ACOG scope onto them, allowing them for that pinpoint-like accuracy at long range. They have some of the best primary gadgets and secondary gadgets, which is barbed wire. I mean, Bandit gets 3 barbed wire, for heaven's sake. Like, that's incredibly valuable for the defensive team. You put all that together, you have the makings for one of the best operators that you can have, and this is the reason why you see them constantly. And so by taking away just one small aspect of them, I don't really think is going to be all that big of a deal. On top of that, if they then give that ACOG scope to, let's say, some of the 3 armored operators in the game, that could actually also make things a lot more interesting. Let's say they gave the ACOG scope to Tachanka and Kapkan. That would be a big deal for those 2 operators. Now, some of you might be saying right now, wait a second, literally last Sunday Mailbox you were talking about how you don't think it's a good idea for Ubisoft to add or give an operator an ACOG scope to buff up their potential. I mean, you talked about that with Mute. I know I sound like a bit of a hypocrite here, and honestly, I still stand by that, but if they are going to take away ACOGs and give it to something else, you know, this doesn't sound like the most unreasonable way of going about it. On top of that, this also fits with their design philosophy, where it only seems like they're giving the ACOG scopes to defenders that have 3 armor and are supposed to anchor on the objective. Doc, Rook, and Echo are the only other ones that have access to ACOGs, and so it kind of makes sense that you would take away, or sort of makes sense that you would take away the 3-speed operators and give it to some 1-speed operators. All in all, though, it's going to be really interesting to see how all of this plays out. I'm not still entirely sold on this leak. I think that it has a high potential to be fake, but of course we'll find out when August 29th rolls around, or if they reveal it at Gamescom. The next question comes from Ben, and it is, what do you think about a new defensive gadget that allows you to cover up drone holes with a metal plate that can be destroyed by an explosion? So I actually get this question a lot. People really like the idea of blocking drone holes, making sure that the enemy isn't able to gather information, and I can see where they're coming from. Thing is, though, is as soon as I read these questions, I automatically think of Mute. We already have an operator that can do that very thing. Sure, they're not able to place a metal plate in front of it, completely blocking it off, but if you don't want drones to go through, just place a mute jammer there, and there's literally no way they're getting on in unless you angle it wrong, or if they have a Twitch drone, for example. And so if this was a brand new operator, I would say absolutely not. I realize that it would also block grenades from getting through those drone holes. If you're trying to perform the bandit trick on certain objectives, that could be really useful. But I still don't think that that would add enough value. You could just use a Jaeger device, for example, that would snatch that grenade, and then you're good to go. You could still use Mute to block the drones, and so yeah, I just don't think, at least for a operator, for this to be their special ability, that just wouldn't provide enough value. As a secondary gadget, though, that might be more of a possibility. If you had the option between barbed wire, a deployable shield, and this drone cover, that actually could be an option. If your team puts an emphasis on making sure the enemy has no idea what your strategy is, you want to keep them out entirely, yeah, you may not have access to barbed wire as much anymore. You're not able just to completely lock down the objective with barbed wire, but at least you can lock them out. You could have a couple of these on a few of the drone holes, you could have the other mutants jammers blocking the main entryways, and you can completely lock down that objective. I feel like that would be a bit more reasonable. In general, though, I would be very surprised if Ubisoft introduced this into Siege, because it just seems a bit too situational. Maybe I'm just being too much of a negative Nancy. And honestly, if they introduced it, I don't think it'd be a bad thing because it just gives players more options. I think giving players the options to create the gameplay that they're looking for and the strategy that they want is a good thing. I just don't think it would happen anytime soon. But yeah, guys, that is it for today's episode of Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. How do you think Ying's gadget is going to perform? Do you think it's going to be heat-seeking? Would you like to see an operator that has the ability to lock up drone holes? Let me know down below in the comment section. As always, if you would like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.